Okay, welcome to this session at the TBM20 Conference. This session is about merge, harmonize, and modernize two big IT landscapes with an integrated enterprise architecture and IT financial management. I'm very happy to welcome Markus Rink today in this session. He will introduce himself in a second. My name is André Christ. I'm the CEO and co-founder of LeanIX, a software as a service vendor for enterprise architecture. But first of all, Markus, please introduce yourself.
Hi, thanks for having me, André. So my name is Markus Rink. I'm working for E.ON as head of global technology architecture. So I'm taking care together with my team that we are developing E.ON's enterprise architecture and also developing our vendor landscape and license landscape. So that's part of my daily job.
Great. Thank you, Markus, for being available for that session. It's always great to have someone from the practice, from a company, explaining firsthand what are the challenges. Just briefly on my background, I co-founded a company almost 9 years ago called LeanIX. It's a software as a service for enterprise architecture and cloud governance. We help companies to figure out the two topics, how they deal with technology change and business alignment in a changing world. We feel that many tool sets have been very complicated, and our mission is, so to say, make that much easier. But it's very, very important for such sessions to hear firsthand from someone in the real world what topics and problems they're dealing with. And I'm excited to be here together with Markus because E.ON, the company Markus works for, has just been merged with another big energy company here in Germany. And some of the topics we would love to talk about today are listed here. So we will talk about the complexity of such a massive merger to understand a bit more of the dimensions in a bit. And second, Markus will explore a bit the challenges for the IT, and specifically, what is the IT strategy in that company right now? The nice thing about it is some weeks ago, I learned that Markus and his team have developed a target picture for their way of looking at IT management and also specifically at enterprise architecture management. So I'm excited to hear more about that today. We will get a brief overview what has been accomplished so far, and we will speak a bit about how Markus sees the further potential of that combination of enterprise architecture, IT financial management, and the other disciplines. Last but not least, I would share a bit insights on how an integrated tool chain of enterprise architecture and IT financial management looks like. But let's start right into the topic, Markus. I would love to hear a bit more about the complexity of this massive merger. Can you share a bit about that?
Yes, thank you very much. When you look at E.ON, we are maybe the biggest utility in Europe, especially if you look at number of customers and managed assets. However, the new E.ON is created now based on an asset swap that we have aligned on with RWE. In the course of that, we acquired one of our biggest rivals in the German market, which is Innogy. And with Innogy, E.ON is focusing on customer solutions businesses in the energy markets and energy networks. And at the same time, RWE is focusing on generation business and supply and trading. With that transaction that has been concluded this year, finally, it comes with quite some, let's say, opportunities. That's more on the right side, but also some challenges more on the left side here. So we will grow significantly in the combination of E.ON and Innogy going forward. As you can see, especially we will serve more than 50 million customers, and also our regulatory asset base is significantly growing with the focus on customer solution energy networks. At the same time, of course, it comes to the question, how do we integrate a company which is almost the same size of E.ON? There are several hundreds of new legal entities, and E.ON already consists out of more than 700 legal entities. how this could happen also from IT perspective. We need to integrate more than 34,000 new colleagues into our group. As you have seen in the picture, there's a quite complex asset swap. So we acquire assets, we give assets to RWE. This all comes with merger and demerger challenges, especially from the IT perspective. You need to carve out services, you need to integrate and deintegrate users and applications. And at the same time, we also obliged as part of the EU antitrust approval to carve out some parts of our businesses, in particular, for example, in Czech or in Hungary or some in Germany. And that also is a challenge because we also need to extract services, applications, data from particular businesses to then sell it to third parties within the next couple of months.
Wow, this is a huge complexity and a massive size of a new organization. You touched a bit on IT already, so I'm absolutely curious now to hear, how would you describe the big challenges at E.ON right now in the middle of processing this merger?
Our challenges are threefold, and I think that slide is highlighting that. Maybe I'll start on the right one. Of course, as you have seen in the previous slide, there's a couple of thousand new colleagues to be integrated. Innogy, of course, has also a full-fledged IT landscape. Combined, we both run with more than 6,000 applications, where, of course, there's a huge potential on rationalization and on the implementation of synergies and synergy potential. It also comes with quite some challenges in terms of the technical integration between our both companies and the user integration. At the same time, we also kicked off activities in order to modernize our IT landscape. You know, as many other businesses, of course, we are faced with the questions around how do we move to the cloud? How could we further rationalize our application landscape? How could we utilize software as a service? How could we actually deliver new capabilities to our businesses with new software? And that closely links to the third question that we have to answer. How do we support and implement the digital transformation of E.ON? As many other industries, or maybe every industry in the world, we also go through a significant change in the way our business gets delivered and how we serve our customers. So that way of dealing with the digital transformation requirements is also something we are challenging ourselves right now. That means, do we need to significantly change our entire landscape, new ways of working, new kinds of products and services, new customer experience that we need to put in place. So many things that we need to model and implement at the same time.
Yeah, when we last time spoke, you mentioned that some of the decisions you are taking now have a pretty long-term effect, and it's sometimes hard to understand right now what the effect is. I'm curious, what role does a modern IT management, and maybe also more specifically, what role does an enterprise architect play in figuring that out? So I believe you have looked into that topic, how you've set up your organization.
Yeah, so for us, it's super important that we have a clear understanding how the enterprise architecture team is actually supporting these challenges. And we have done this based on 4 particular measures that we have put in place. So one is we have implemented governance body and governance structures in order to set direction, especially on digital transformation. As you said, we need to avoid that short-term synergy measures are affecting our long-term transformation approach. So we need to always balance out between, you know, what could be done on short notice and what has a long-term impact. So therefore also our data that we create and our plans need to be aligned in order to avoid that we take decisions which then contradict to either the synergies or the transformation or the modernization. So it's quite a challenge to have all three targets in, let's say, in place, and taking care that you have enough collaboration and discussion with the stakeholders to trade off between these three sometimes very conflicting targets that we have. And also our architecture governance has now been embedded in the major decisions to be made from an investment perspective. So we have architects embedded in all our modernization projects. We have looked in all of our synergy proposals, in all the harmonization approaches. We also have helped set the IT strategy towards cloud first and DevOps practice. And of course, we also have started to implement our governance in daily operations and in a close collaboration with all the different IT departments that we have in our entire group. And finally, of course, tracking the development of roadmaps, the implementation of our IT strategy, and the delivery of synergies is something that we also take care as an architecture team.
Yeah. We have been fortunate to partner with you on some of those areas. And I know you have a view on what an underlying platform should look like. So maybe could you share a bit on how you leverage your architecture platform today, and maybe after that we can have a look at what's the bigger picture of enterprise architecture. So how's your view on an underlying EA platform?
You know, especially with the integration of Innogy, we have a significant broader set of data and information that we need to digest and also understand, you know, where are the potentials, where are opportunities, because, you know, we also want to have the best of both worlds and seeing, you know, what is available and where is our IT departments heading towards. So we have implemented LeanIX as our central repository now, and we're also harmonizing all our other IT management tools on a global basis so that we have single tools and single source of truth in our organization. We started with LeanIX, and I must admit that also with the smooth transition that we have done and been able to conclude with your organization, we have brought this already in place. So we have now an integrated view on what is existing in the entire new E.ON world. We can also start implementing a common AI model. So we have also, of course, learned that enterprise architecture management has done slightly different at old E.ON, old Innogy. So also we are working in a way of how could we achieve a single model? How could we expose that model to other IT management functions so that everybody understands how we describe our IT landscape, and how could we integrate the tool, which is also important, especially in operational processes. So for example, we run all our security classification, data privacy measures through processing, which then finally ends up in the LeanIX repository. So it's also important that your enterprise architecture practice is integrated into daily operations.
That sounds really cool, how you've integrated it. I know you have a bigger picture of how you look at enterprise architecture management, and I would probably say even more like embedded into IT management. Could you share a bit more on your view on the big picture of EA?
Yeah, now we are with the implementation of LeanIX at the starting point. In a let's say comprehensive enterprise architecture platform, we would like, of course, to get all IT assets into that. We want to also connect this to our ServiceNow environment, because we have all our CIs mentioned in and captured in our CMDB there. We know our software license assets. We use Flexera there in order to manage our estate. We have Effective for our global portfolio, where we have all the change initiatives, obviously, and Apptio as our cost platform, let's say it like that. Our main vision is, of course, that we're not only focusing on the technology assets and managing this portfolio, but also looking into our portfolio of business capabilities, which is part of our platform. And finally, of course, we want to look into the portfolio of outcomes, which is important to achieve the targets of our digital transformation. I think our target picture tries to address these three major challenges I have mentioned. So the synergies and how could you focus on efficiency, and it's not a one-off shot. Efficiency, cost control, managing your risk is an ongoing exercise, and very important that the architects have a clear view on that perspective of our IT landscape. At the same time, we need to take decisions and manage decision-making across the entire group in terms of where do we want to invest into business capabilities, new products and services, and how could we utilize the insights of the data that we have across the entire group, and how could we drive this to further new value pools that we can address, and new outcomes and new services that we can offer to our end customers. So therefore, it's important that we have all these three aspects that we can get all the information necessary to drive the change in all of these three dimensions at the same time. And that means got a lot more than just, let's say, some IT assets that you need to look at. You really need to have a relatively comprehensive view about everything that you have in place, how you run your business, how you grow your business, how you change your business. And of course, we also want to use analytics and more reporting to learn from the data, which is also something I believe gives us quite some opportunities for the future to even get more value out of, let's say, the platforms and the data pools that we currently run.
I very much like your view on enterprise architecture, that it's, as you said, not only technology focused, although it has security in it as a big aspect, but then it's spanning all the way over data, business, and then going all the way to experience and product architecture. So a very comprehensive framework. So obviously, many people out there might ask, okay, where are you today? Where are you stand? What have you achieved so far? So would you be able to share a bit on what you have achieved so far?
Yeah, of course. As I said, our main focus right now was, first of all, getting the first steps done with our integration. So we have rolled out LeanIX as our global tool for enterprise architecture management. We have validated 80% of the synergy measures which are architectural related. Not every synergy measure, of course, is architectural driven. We have implemented our enterprise architecture governance across the new entire E.ON group. We have achieved cost transparency on service level. So we can actually calculate now our costs for the entire group on our service portfolio. And we have started with our main modernization projects, and we also have started with defining our digital transformation roadmap. Of course, modernization and digital transformation going hand in hand, so therefore they're both well connected.
Great, thanks for sharing that. What would you say are some of the potentials where also not only we as a tool vendor, but also the other providers and vendors in that space can look at the further potential? So what do you think is out there as an opportunity for the next couple of years to even improve?
You know, our industry, and it's for both, it's for the energy, but also for the IT industry. There's quite some change going forward. So for us, of course, we need to get a more detailed view on our cost, not simply on service level, but also on application level, maybe even on later on microservice level. So because also the way you model an IT landscape is changing quite dramatically. For us, also important is getting more of a TCO view. As you know, you have a quite good understanding about your run cost of maybe an application or an infrastructure component. However, if you want to take decisions on adjustments, you also need to know about your cost to change. You need to know about what have you initially invested into that particular service component application, so that you have a more comprehensive view also on your financial impact that you create with the changes that you want to decide upon. We have captured quite some data in many of our IT management systems, and I think it's now also time to harvest more of the insights that you can get out of this data. So getting more analytics into this combined information. Also in terms of forecasting or simulation. Could you also maybe create more time series views on the data that you have and what has changed, what hasn't changed, where do we need to change? So there's a lot more help that these tools can offer by simply getting more out of the data that we have stored for years within these environments. With the cloudification of our industry and the cloudification of IT assets, of course, the integration of cloud services is super important. And that is not just for the hyperscaler that you know what Azure service or what Google Cloud service you have actually consumed and to which extent. You know, coming from an enterprise application world, and our enterprise application world is moving into software as a service landscape. We also need to understand what drives the cost of a software as a service environment. And is it SAP or you know, Microsoft, Salesforce? We've got many of these software as a service providers, and they have come all with different metrics and cost and technical elements. So we also need to have a better understanding how this data gets integrated and becomes part of our landscape view and our decision making. And finally, new delivery models like the agile delivery or DevOps are changing the way we do application or technical support, technical maintenance, development. We create a lot more value with these kinds of approaches towards the business. How could you show that? And how could you also bring this in particular to the financial aspect? Because planning is a little bit different if you do this agile with a relatively volatile scope compared to a waterfall approach, of course, where also cost planning might be different. And therefore, if you look at TCO, for example, DevOps is changing a lot the way you're calculating TCOs. So therefore, this is, from my perspective, the main topics where we need to get more capabilities into our tool landscapes, into our enterprise architecture function in order to deal with the challenges of the future.
Thank you, Markus. This is a great overview and summary of where the potential sits and obviously should influence the one or the other roadmap, obviously, of the products. Within the next few minutes, I'd just like to give a quick deep dive into how an integrated tool chain could look like. And some of our customers are often asking, so how does it fit together if you have an EA tool, an IT service management tool like ServiceNow, which Markus also talked about, and then Apptio. So in this case, this is a great schematics, which actually one of the Innogy employees has presented at one of our conferences, which I like a lot, because you see that in this case, an application is kind of born in the enterprise architecture repository here in LeanIX. It gets its life cycle from there. It's then synced into the IT service management tool and also in the IT financial management tool. And from there, more detail is attached to it. So what's the installation composition? What are actually the config items which are underlying to an application? And how does it relate to the IT business service? So kind of the service catalog deployed to the business. And by making sure that those tool sets are actually talking about the same things, there's less friction in talking about what are the applications we're having, what are the services we're having, what are they composed of. And so that's an example toolchain, which actually now goes also into the other direction. So it's not only a sync from LeanIX to ServiceNow and Apptio, but as you will see in a minute, also data is flowing back. So one of the first steps to look at is what data is actually going from LeanIX to Apptio in that case. So for example, business capabilities, applications, IT components and providers, these can be structures which then fuel the TBM taxonomy within Apptio, so that if you relate and calculate the cost on a service level, you have the same structures in place, you relate it to the same applications, and essentially that actually helps to accelerate the ramp up of an IT financial management with Apptio. The second thing is, thanks to the capabilities to maintain the business capabilities, the applications, and so on, you have a very distributed maintenance of that data. And that helps to ensure that the cost data, which is in the end calculated, stays reliable. To give you an example how the outcome looks like, so here are two example dashboards in Apptio, which show the cost per application, which then also incorporate attributes from the LeanIX repository. So you can look at dashboards where you look at all applications which are data sensitive, or where you have invested as part of a transformation program. You can now take different views and filter criteria which you have derived from your enterprise architecture data right inside of Apptio, and even increase the capabilities to drive analytics forward. The next step, which is interesting, is the way back. So taking the service costs which have been calculated in Apptio and feeding them back into the enterprise architecture environment again. That improves a 360-degree view of a single application, because you not only look at what that application is composed of, what user groups it's supporting, what projects are currently running, but also what's the total cost of ownership, what's the run cost behind it, or what are the current projects costs going on. So that increases overall the stakeholder buy-in, because you look on an application really from a full cycle, and that makes it very interesting then also for more the business view on the IT landscape. Of course, this integration allows you to do a periodic pull of the individual cost data, so that there's reduced manual effort of updating that data within the enterprise architecture repository, because it just comes in on a regular basis. Just to give an idea how in the end it looks like, you can then look at what are the costs per business capability. You can drill it down. You see that here on the left-hand side in the application landscape. You can highlight application by their cost. So it's much easier to create heat maps and use the data, for example, of the cost data to figure out what are the big applications in my landscape. So these are a few examples on a tool perspective, how Apptio and LeanIX can work nicely together and exchange data in both directions. Combined with the inspirations Markus gave, there's a lot still to do, I think, for both for us at LeanIX, maybe also for Apptio in this joint combination. But I'm, first of all, very thankful today for all those insights by Markus. I would have loved to travel with him actually to the conference in Las Vegas. Due to the situation right now in the world, that's not possible. But nevertheless, it's always fantastic to hear firsthand how companies are thinking about big and challenging, complex IT projects like a big merger we've heard today. And therefore, a big thank you to you, Markus, for this partnership and for being available in this session today. Thank you.
Thank you. And as I said, it was a pleasure to present that. Our challenges we've seen significant. However, with Apptio and LeanIX, we think we got good partners in order to help us and able to manage our IT landscapes in the future.
Thank you so much.